So I want to talk to you about void methods. And there'll be our introduction to methods as well. So suppose I want to remake this book cover. Is this a useful thing? No, but just hold on. All right, so you would create this cover and you would look like this. You'd have like one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Okay, good times. So once you've finished coding this, hopefully you can see that we've got some code repeated. Like we've got two fishes facing left and two fishes facing right. So it would be really great if I could somehow minimize my code so I don't have that repetition. Now, I can't use a loop here because it isn't straight up repeated. Like there's one fish and two fish and red fish and blue fish, and that's all different. So I can't use a loop. But what I can use is I can use something called a method. And those are good for when you have repeated code, but it's separated and it's not straight repeated, like in a loop situation. So those pictures, you can see that they're repeated and they're taking up a lot of space. So it'd be nice if we could be more efficient. So what we can do is we can make something called a method. And this is a method here. And I'm going to point out some names in this thing, and these are very helpful on your sheet. Okay, so come back here if you have troubles later on. So right here we have a return type, and this return type is void, and that means that it returns nothing. Then we have the method name, and the name of this method is leftfish. So if I want to activate my method later on, I'm going to use the method name to do so. Right over here, I have some brackets, and the brackets are indicating the parameters or the input to the method. And we have no input to the method and no parameters. So this is actually the simplest kind of method. It has no input because no output because it's a void method. It has no input because it has nothing in its brackets. All it has is a name. This first line here is called the method signature. And that line is the line that tells us about all the input and the output and the method name of the method. So it's kind of like the main title line of the method. After I've got that main title line finished, and at this stage, ours are all going to look very similar to this. We're going to have public void, then some name that you pick yourself, and then nothing in the brackets. You're going to start your method. And you start your method with a curly brace, and you end it with a curly brace. I hope that you're starting to see that we use curly braces to define regions in our code. We used it to define the main method, to define the constructor, to define areas in your if, and to define areas in your loops. So here we are defining it again in the methods. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the method name, you can name it however you want, but you have to follow the variable naming rules. Can't start with a space, can't have a space in it, can't start with a number, can't use a keyword, should be meaningful, those sorts of things. They all apply in this situation as well. Otherwise, this is how you're going to set up your method. So put the code that you want to repeat inside those curly braces and build your method signature using the method name. So here I've got the right fish and the left fish. And you can see I've got public void right fish, bracket, bracket, public void left fish, bracket, bracket. Those are my, my method signatures. Void means I return nothing. The brackets mean it has no parameters. The method name is in the middle. And then I have the brackets around the outside. So then if I wanted to call or activate my methods from my constructor, I would call the right fish method, putting brackets after it and then a semicolon. And I would call the left fish, calling its name with brackets after it and a semicolon. So the entire program would look like the one that you see over here on the right. So we've got one fish, and then we call the method, two fish, and then we call the method, red fish, call the method, blue fish, call the method. And you can see that we've got our nice little methods underneath there. And that contrasts with the first program. Now, in this particular instance, it isn't really making our lines of code that much shorter because we've got some additional spaces. So let me sell you on another feature that the second program has that the first one doesn't. I'm sure at some point in your life, you've had to cut and paste a chunk of something 4 or 5 times. And then what always seems to happen to me as soon as I cut and paste something 4 or 5 times is I promptly discover a mistake in what I've cut and pasted. And then I have to go back and fix it all. I would argue that the second one, what that allows you to do is it's going to allow you to fix it in one spot in the method. And then the program will automatically refer to just that method. So you won't need to cut and paste in your errors. or cut and paste out your errors. Like it handles all those kinds of situations when you're doing that. You fix it in one place and it is fixed everywhere. So in addition to making our code more elegant by pulling out repeated code, it's also saving us from some of those cut and paste errors. So a method is a subprogram, a function, or a procedure. It's a set of code which is separate from the rest of your program. It has a name and it can be called or invoked at any point in the program simply by using the method's name. It can receive information when it's called or not, and it can return a value or not. It has a method signature. This first line here is the method signature, and it defines the major functions of the method. Its code is going to be enclosed in curly braces. In the product development lifecycle, we're going to be using them in the design phase. What we'll do, well, we'll actually use it extensively, but in the design phase, we're going to divide the code into methods, and then we write the method signatures. And then in the coding phase, we're going to give each method to assign to a different programmer. And methods are going to allow hundreds of programmers to work together easily. So what happens is we'll use methods to break down a program into little pieces, which then can call each other using the method signatures.